I know you are not nearly as excited as I am. I think a few days ago my emotions started to kind of run away with me because I was doing all of this reminiscing and you know how it is, just thinking, and I got excited, and I think one thing is that the people who know me best in this is like my church family, they got so excited because they know how I feel about Tuskegee. And it's just really good to be here, and I just thank Dr. Collier for having invited me. And I never would have dreamed in all my years that I'd be back in this capacity. Having been a little girl running these halls and working in the labs and learning the latest dances. We were all kids. We didn't always come in and work in the laboratory and learn our experiments. We were dancing just like you do. But it was a great experience, and I just want to share some things with you and hope you're inspired. My daughter interviewed me yesterday and put it on Facebook, and we've had tremendous responses. And some were people who had degrees in criminal justice and related areas, and they were so inspired. Because I'm talking to you about 1 degree and many experiences. And you'll see why. We couldn't nearly go into it yesterday like we're doing today, but it was very inspirational, they're telling me. As Dr. Collier said, I was born in Rosebud, Texas, a little town about this big. And graduated a long time ago in 1955. I know that sounds like eons ago. But I came to Tuskegee. I never thought I was going to another college. In my heart, even as a child, I knew I was coming to Tuskegee. And I tell you why. I was interested in being a pediatrician. And Tuskegee offered an agricultural chemistry course that was related to a pre-med course. So that's where I had my mind set, but that's not the way it turned out. So I had a high school classmate, Dr. Herman Walker, who now resides in Phoenix, Arizona. He and I rode the Greyhound bus to Tuskegee. So we were high school classmates and college classmates. And he's just an outstanding citizen in Phoenix. He's worked in the area of education out there. The first dorm I lived in was Whitehall, room 5. Whitehall, room 5. That's in the basement. I don't know how I got in Whitehall because James Hall was the freshman dorm at that time. But I think they had run out of room in James Hall. They had to stick me somewhere. And I'm glad they did. Now, I'm learning some things just by talking to these young ladies for a brief time. I think room and board was $50 a month.
Wow. What is it now?
What is it now?
Almost 5.
5,000 for the year or for the semester?
Maybe 600 a month?
Something like that.
About $50. And I remember, no, it was $45 a month.
Yes, still.
Because I had $5 left over. And the Kellogg Conference Center was then Dorothy Hall. And it had a little restaurant area, and I would be so glad to get that extra $5 because I could spend a little money to buy a swanky frank. That's what they serve down there. A hot dog with cheese or something. But I look forward to being able to, because they sent me care packages. My grandmother raised, so she sent me care packages. So it's $45 a month. Boys and girls sat separately in chapel. Y'all ever hear that before?
I've heard it.
The girls sat on one side, but we couldn't sit together in chapel. We sat separately. The girls couldn't have cars. I thought that was very unfair. But the boys could have cars. Somebody asked me one day, did you go so-and-so when you were? I said, we couldn't leave campus like that. No, we didn't go anywhere. We just stayed right on campus. Now, one of the most beautiful things is that on Sunday morning, we marched to chapel. Did anybody know that? We marched to chapel. Part of our tuition was to pay for a uniform, and the girls wore navy skirts and long sleeve white blouses, and we had capes that were just beautiful. We didn't have sense enough to appreciate it. We wore the capes, the navy capes that matched the skirt with a blue lining and black French heels, and people, we lined up according to classification. Led by the ROTC and maybe the band. But it was beautiful. It was a lot of pomp and circumstance, and people came from miles around just to see us march to chapel.
That was every Sunday?
Huh?
Was that every Sunday?
Every Sunday morning.
Wow.
And we didn't appreciate it. The girls didn't want the boyfriends to see them in those skirts, unfitted skirts. You know how silly. We were all the same. There's nothing new under the sun. So we understand you. That's why we understand you. I was here at the time that Rosa Parks sat on the bus, and there was a fellow who came to speak to us one chapel service during those years named Martin Luther King. And there was just kind of the beginning of the movement, and we were aggravated with him because he just mentioned the movement. We wanted to hear about it. But anyway, those are some of the differences that we experienced with you now. I'm sure there were some others that I couldn't remember, but those just kind of stand out in my mind. And I certainly remember us marching the chapel on Sunday morning. I got an engagement ring in Logan Hall one Saturday night in the dark. That's where we watched movies on Saturday night. So then people ask me all the time, well, how did you get to Memphis from Texas? My husband that I met here lived in Memphis, Tennessee. And of course, I'm a widow. It's my daughter's daddy, but he's passed away. And I've been in Memphis all those years. And I love Memphis, Tennessee. So after we married, he was a year behind me. So he finished up his degrees at the University of Memphis. In fact, he was, when I graduated, he was a junior. So he got his bachelor's, his master's, and he was the first black doctorate out of the University of Memphis. So we had lots of things going on early in life. We had 2 children, back to back, 13 months apart, and he worked part-time and I wasn't working. So one day I decided, I guess this degree means I gotta get a job. That's what degrees mean, you know. I can get a job. So I placed applications. We had 2 school systems, one in the city of Memphis, one in Shelby County, and I placed applications in the school systems. And I also got the telephone book one day and sat down, and I looked the University of Tennessee, different departments. I wrote a letter and mailed it letter to several different departments. So I got a job offer with both school systems. One was teaching math at the high school that my husband had graduated from in Memphis, Melrose High School, and another one teaching physics at another school in the county. And then the telephone rang, and it was a pathologist from the University of Tennessee. And he said, "Is this Tommie Matthews?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Your letter landed in my hand. I want you to come in for an interview." And I thought, oh my goodness. I didn't have a clue who he was, what he was talking about. But it turned out to be a wonderful situation. So I went in for the interview, and there was one employee in the laboratory. Her name was Jacqueline Boyd. And as I understand it, Jacqueline is still alive. I know Dr. Francisco is. That was his name. County medical examiner. And they hired me. They hired me on the spot. And and I didn't know, I didn't know anything about toxicology and all these instruments that I looked around and saw, spectrophotometers and gas chromatography and all of that. I didn't have a clue. And of course they hired me, and I was the only other employee in the lab along with Jackie, and she was just a tremendous supervisor. She was very patient with me, but you see, that never would have happened had I not had a degree from Tuskegee. That name itself, know this, that name itself carries a lot of weight wherever you are. So my daughter, when she interviewed me, she said, I knew if I used the word Tuskegee, people were going to look and listen. So it carries a lot of weight with people of all colors. So I started work there, and it was just the most interesting work, and I learned quickly because I wanted to learn. I wasn't that smart. And with her being the only employee there when she left, I'd get busy and I'd practice things on my own. And I learned a lot just by teaching myself. I never shall forget the first case that I worked on, and this really impacted me, and I'll tell you why. A little girl, we bordered Mississippi. Tennessee borders, Memphis borders, Mississippi, Arkansas. A little girl had come from Mississippi to grocery shop with her parents. I even remember her name. I won't call it. You never know who knows who. I don't care wherever you are. We talk about Memphis is a small town. We live in a small country. And she had to use the restroom. So they permitted her to go to the restroom alone. And there was a young man back there who was stalking. He raped her and killed her. And I think he's still on death row. And I'm going to tell you how it impacted me. When I see parents in a situation and they let their child go to the restroom alone, I will say to them, please don't let your daughter. I just did it. We were at Old Charlie's a week ago, and I saw this couple eating with their son and daughter, and the little girl went to the restroom by herself, and I went back there, she was by herself, and I told the daddy, please don't ever let your daughter go to the restroom alone. That's good for somebody else in here too. So even if I'm in church and I see little children going to the restroom, whether they're girls or boys, I tell them, please don't allow them. I have two grandboys, and they're grown now, but when they were young, we'd go out to gather on the weekend, and we'd go eat, and I'd take them to different places. But they could never go to the boys' restroom. They always had to go to the restroom with me. And they just had a thing, look, Mama, we don't want to go in this woman's restroom. I said, I'm sorry, you're going. But then we had a situation where we had a rash of methyl alcohol poisoning. That's unusual. Methyl alcohol? You don't have that many methyl alcohol poisoning because we tested for all alcohol. And we did that on gas chromatography. And we finally found out that this man was distilling canned heat, and he had a famous squeeze drink, he called it, that he was serving at his parties, and he was killing people.
Famous squeeze.
Yeah.
Famous squeeze drink. So here I am working for the medical examiner and seeing all these things, having all these experiences. Now you work for the medical examiner, you're going to see everything. I didn't actually see autopsy. I wasn't a part of the autopsy team. But I thought, well, I'm going to see an autopsy one day, and I'm going to make up my mind, and I'm going to see one. And one day I walked in the wrong door. It didn't work. And there were two in process. And that kind of got me. It made me sick. And my boss at the time, my other pathologist who later learned or started working in the lab, said, Tommy, she said, she was a pathologist, she said, if I don't start one, it makes me sick. So it wasn't a beautiful sight. I never got that out of my mind. But anyway, you know, you're talking about an autopsy, everything comes to the laboratory. The organs, the blood, the urine. I won't say the other because people are eating. But it comes. You see it. So I learned to handle a lot of things. I got to be very tough-skinned. My first murder case, there was a situation where a woman was found dead behind an old plant, an international harvester plant, and she had been mutilated. And here they bring all of her in the laboratory. I even remember her name. You don't forget things like that. And they traced her to a young Marine who had been seen with her in the bar. And they found out that this particular man, Vietnam veteran, lived in Arkansas. And you know, Memphis separates West Memphis by a bridge. And it was real neat when Clinton was president and Gore was vice president. On one side they'd have Tennessee, home of Al Gore. Arkansas on the other side of the same thing, home of President Clinton. So they waited for him to come across the bridge. And by now, I'm going out with the homicide detectives and inspecting cars. So he came across it. You could just see it. He'd been really clean with Ajax. You know, we women recognize Ajax girls. And he had cleaned that car. So I had to examine the car. And every time I see one of these little white strips on a Hershey bell, I think of that situation. That's been a long time. But that's what I found in the car. And it had human blood on it. And then, of course, now that means I got to go to court and testify. Now, just to be honest, I was a nervous wreck. I thought, I can't go in court and look at that man, and he looks at me. He's going to know who I am, you know, all kinds of thoughts. So finally, the medical examiner settled me down. He said, Tommie, you're not on trial. I said, well, I feel like I am. But all kinds of interesting things with this one degree from Tuskegee. And then I met a young man at that time who's still living. He has his old-fashioned pharmacy. Dr. Champion, at that time, he was a young pharmacist, and I was a young chemist. So now the drug business is beginning to boom and blossom. So now we're doing all of these drugs, having to analyze all these drugs. And if I got one and I didn't know how to start it because it was just so odd or something, I'd go to him, and we talk about that now because he has his own pharmacy. And that's been years ago. And he helped me get started. Then I'd have to go to court and testify that. So I'm telling you about all these experiences that I had as a result of this degree and having worked for the medical examiner. Then they asked me if I would become a part of the trace evidence team, who really do trace evidence. That means hairs and fibers and rape cases. But the most interesting thing is they sent me to the FBI lab. So I went to the FBI lab for a week to train. And that was highly unusual. I don't know how he pulled that off because the FBI, the laboratory, is set up to train law enforcement officers. But evidently he knew somebody. So there I was up there. I get up every morning in the hotel that we lived in and walk to the FBI lab. Now, I'm going to say this. It sounds really wonderful, but everything wasn't rosy because, you know, people are jealous. Expect that. You got to grow up. You got to grow up. You got to be thick-skinned when you get out of Tuskegee and you leave home. You got to be on your own. Things are different, aren't they? Aren't they, everybody who's had to do that? They're different. You don't have that covering. So you have to learn how to deal with life. And I used to tell my kids, there's a big black bear out there called life. And if you're not ready, it'll chew you up and spit you out. So you got to learn. So you got to leave home. Bye. And they told everybody, Mama put us out. You can't stay here. My son went to college in Memphis. I said, you got to live in the dormitory. But it's very essential that you learn how to cope with life. So things got a little different. I saw some differences and some discrepancies. Even other people came aboard in the lab. The salaries were different. I was training and my salary would be lower sometimes. All of that happens on the job. All that happens in work, in real life. So I'm trying to help prepare you. That's very essential. So then I decided, well, maybe it's time I leave. I've been there 10 years. And I tell you, that was the most interesting situation that I was a part of. And I decided, well, I'll go to work at Methodist because Jacqueline, who had hired me in toxicology, was now manager of the chemistry lab at Methodist Hospital. And I called her and I said, Jackie, I need a job. She said, you got one. And the whole thing that was so wonderful about that is that while I worked in toxicology those 10 years, the state of Tennessee passed a law that in order to work in a medical laboratory, you would have to have a license. And I didn't work in a medical laboratory. I worked, of course, in forensic pathology. And one day, my big boss came in and he shared this information with me. And he said, I want you to take that test. I said, take that test? I don't do any medical stuff like that. So he said, they're giving it on all levels. He said, they're giving it on assistance level. They're giving it on supervisory level. They're giving it on managerial level. He gave me all the levels. So I thought, well, I could probably read enough to pass it on, laboratory assistant. I forgot medical technology. So he said, no, I want you to take on supervisory level. And I thought, oops. And do you know, I took it, and I had to have some divine help who let me pass that test. Now, when I called Jackie, she said, the only thing is you got to have a license. And I said, I've got one. She said, what? Now, I go into this situation and I have a supervisory license that lots of people, I won't say lots, but several in the laboratory had not yet gotten their supervisory license. So that meant after working there a while and learning different situations, I now become our supervisor of special chemistry. And I worked that area a long time. Then I became assistant supervisor because the lab was set up in 3 phases: chemistry, toxicology. They had a toxicology lab there at Methodist that I didn't want to be any part of it, and special chemistry. So I was over special chemistry. Just so many wonderful experiences. So I worked in that laboratory 21 years at Methodist Hospital. So I finally retired. And even after retirement, I got a call one day, and this young lady that I probably hadn't seen in 20 years called me and said she worked for CDC in Atlanta. And she said, Tommie, just like that, come and go to Zambia with me. And I said, Zambia? What are we going to Zambia for? And she said, I need you to come and go with me. And I'm an intercessor, so I said, well, we have to pray about this. And so finally I got commissioned to go. So here I am now, retired, and this degree is still being utilized. I want to impact you with that. This degree is still being utilized. having used it all those years in toxicology, in forensic pathology, and doing trace evidence, and drug analysis, and all of that. Now she wants me to go with her. So it turned out I was part of a team, and we went 2 by 2. So I went with a fellow named Eddie. We went to Zambia, Lusaka, and what we were doing, we were part of PEPFAR. Anybody heard of PEPFAR? PEPFAR, you heard of PEPFAR? George Bush's implemented PEPFAR. It was one of his dream things. And it's called President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. And what we did, we go into different laboratories and train the people in that area of work that would help them better analyze for those tests that they use to define AIDS. And my job was to go in and train them in the area of quality control. And we'd get up every morning and get in a cab, and we'd have to go to different hospitals, even in not just Lusaka, but different little areas, and train them. And I made great friendships going into those laboratories. And it was really an awesome responsibility, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. Finally, we were running out of time. I think we were there about 2 weeks. We were running out of time, and it was getting time to go. So we had to break up. We had to go separately. We couldn't go as a team anymore. We had to go and get in a hurry. But we trained them, and just not too long ago, I heard President Obama make a statement, and he talked about how he inherited this wonderful thing from George Bush called PEPFAR. And this is a statement that he made that just so impacted me. He said, as of this year, over 1 million children were born in Africa that were AIDS-free. Wow. And I just jumped up and down and thought, oh, I was part of PEPFAR. He said, because of PEPFAR. And I was very, very happy about that. So here I am, retired, and going as part of a very, very, very special team. Okay, now, you think that's the end of it, but when I was there, in my heart and in my spirit, I thought, I got to come back over here. And I knew it. I said, I got to come back over here. And next time, it's ministry. So sure enough, I said, now, who is the contact person? I got to have a contact person. When I got back to Memphis, I'd been back home 3 or 4 months, and I met this gentleman in Memphis, Tennessee, from Lusaka, Zambia. Sure enough, he invited me to come over, and my daughter and I went last year, 2014. We went back to where I had been as part of PEPFAR, Lusaka. When I went, they paid us lots of money. I wish they'd asked me to go again as part of PEPFAR. But I stayed in the Lusaka Intercontinental 5-star hotel. And it was just kind of funny when I went last year with her. She said, Mama, when you were over here, I thought you were out in the jungle, the backwoods. When she saw the Lusaka hotel, she said, here you were living in this hotel? Lusaka Intercontinental? Mm-hmm. But we were able to go this time on a mission trip. And not only did we do mission work in Lusaka, but we went to Mumba, Shoma, Kalundo, and we ended up in Livingstone. You know, what's there, right in that area is Victoria Falls. So we worked hard. It was hard work. But it turned out to be just a quite rewarding experience to go this time also as the other time. So I hope I've convinced you and inspired you and motivate you to keep on doing what you're doing. As I said, with the responses that she's gotten, people in criminal justice, they say, now I know I can do what I set out to do. Now I know I can venture out, and I just don't have to use this degree to teach. Some of you already made up your mind. I got to. You feel like you're hemmed in with your degree, but you're not. There are things out there, there are areas out there, there's work out there, there are people out there that hire. And I know young people now, we think they're different than what we were, but we all pretty much. But you gotta go in with the right attitude. You gotta go in with the right attitude. And I'm getting old-fashioned now. I'm no longer educated now. I'm just a little old lady, a little old mother, a little old grandmother, a little old teacher, Sunday school teacher who taught young people that you gotta go in with the right attitude. You gotta go in with the right attire. You gotta be able to handle yourself professionally in a respectful, and you got to recognize authority. And I'm gonna throw that, even if authority is wrong, you must know that you have to recognize authority. And that's what helps you get to where you're going. My nephew here just moved here, and he's been moved to Memphis, I'm sorry, and he's been filling out applications. And we review the application. And he doesn't have a comma because I was also in an essay contest and spelling contest, so I pick up everything. I said, there's no comma here, there's no comma here. And then I explained to him, listen, when people look at applications, you know, they'll soon put an application in the trash can. If they got 30 applications, they're not gonna fool with put no commas and question marks on your application. They put that, so I don't have time to fool with that. So that's very important. Things that you don't think that important is very important. So I just hope and I pray that my coming here today has not been in vain. And I want you to know Tuskegee is the land of the swift-growing cycle. God bless you. Thanks for having me. This is the thing that Natalie likes us to, that very Martin King that I met and heard when I was here at Tuskegee. I did his laboratory work on him when he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? All right, sweetheart.
I wasn't here for most of your speech, but I was wondering, throughout your career, what was the most difficult thing you encountered?
Most difficult? Oh, there were quite a few.